Hi, Cedric, and hi, everybody over there in South Africa. Believe you me, I'd rather be there than here. I'm sure you heard about the slush and all the white stuff we're having here. I'm so sorry I can't join you. I've had some problems with my eyes, and you'll see I'll be blinking a lot. But I wanted to share some thoughts with you the way Cedric has asked me to on the subject of coherence. So I really, would like this to be a very sort of informal chat with you on my thoughts on coherence. So I completely agree with Cedric that this topic of coherence is of utmost importance in a post-conflict setting. It's important because, the window of opportunity for peace building to take place in a post-conflict setting is not exactly huge. I mean, either you get it right and you do DDR right and you do security sector reform right, or as you see, things may go awry or worse, things may relapse. But also, secondly, equally important, we have to get coherence right because the world's attention on a particular country is not going to last forever. International interests surge and wane depending on what's going on elsewhere in the world. So when we have the interest, that's when we have to make sure that everybody is doing the right thing so we achieve the maximum impact. So coherence, as far as I see it, is having shared objectives, having well-defined shared objectives that internally within a government or within the national, within the nation, as well as externally within the international community. So this shared vision and a shared agreed upon action in order to achieve that shared vision. The way I see it when we talk about coherence is really more at the policy level. We talk about coherence usually at the policy level, meaning that all of us are in step and we are in sync with our policy initiatives. I think when it comes to the programmatic level, I think the word that normally is used is coordination. So I'm not saying the two are disjointed. I think once you have policy coherence and there's a good understanding, and this is followed by program coordination, meaning that everybody's intervention, everybody's activity in the area of peace building is well coordinated one with each other, that's when you achieve the maximum impact. So both internal, external coherence, as well as policy coherence and program coordination. Now, what do we mean by internal coherence? I think there's no need for me to tell you, all of you know. Obviously, when a government expresses well, defines well, articulates well its vision going forward of how it wants to get out of its post-crisis stage, how it wants to emerge from this post-conflict situation, and is able to define a well-thought-through vision, well-articulated, well understood, and implementable, obviously, but more importantly also where all the various actors understand their role. I think that's very key, where people understand what their role is in order to meet this internal vision, this internal coherence. So once you have internal coherence, in a way, is actually a bit easier to achieve external coherence, because then the international community understands this internal coherence, buys into it, hopefully, and then is able to act accordingly so that they coordinate or work with each other so that we're not stepping over each other's toes. There's not wastage of resources and duplications, but instead we're all working towards a common purpose. And that's why, as I said, once you have good internal coherence, the chances are better of having external. But I don't want to be that bureaucratic about it. It doesn't happen naturally, obviously, and that's why I think a lot of times we have to be very truthful, and in a way provide guidance to governments if we find that vision is not well articulated enough, and we have to help in terms of filling in the blanks, making it much more real. And then also when it comes to external community, let's be very honest. We've heard way too often, too many times, of that lack of coherence between a donor capital expounding a particular stance vis-a-vis a country because of external variables, which is not in sync with what their representative on the ground is saying. I face too many of these in our work, believe you me, in our Peacebuilding Commission countries where the two are not in sync. And to be very honest, a lot of the ambassadors and reps on the ground a lot of times are actually very frustrated with this state of affairs. So I'm not saying that external coherence is so easily achievable because this is a donor community. On the contrary, a lot of times they do work at cross purposes between each other. Coherence is very important from the external community point of view in terms of drawing too much attention, on a government trying to escape from fragility, drawing their attention towards the donor's own agenda, especially reporting requirements, expecting governments that are weak a lot of times, very low capacities to fulfill all the reporting requirements of a particular donor country. And that also, I think, breaks down that external coherence. And I think that's very important to point out because a lot of times we're not sensitive enough to the fact that countries emerging from crisis, are putting out fires daily in every sense of the word. And we must be sensitive to how much we can pool them to meet our needs. So that kind of coherence is important. So in order to maybe to make myself clearer, I thought I'd talk about 3 case examples. I'll talk about one example where I think is one of the best case scenarios of where there is both internal and external coherence. I'll talk about a case that has been pretty bad in the sense that things have broken down where there was no internal or external coherence. And then a third case sort of in between. The best case scenario, as far as I'm concerned, was the case of Rwanda post-genocide. As you all know, this was horrendous, 800,000 to 1 million people murdered during the genocide. And in a way, I know this is strange to say, but such tragedy, I think, brings about creative thinking. Such tragedy moves people to do things that otherwise might be a bit, out of the ordinary in terms of creativity and thinking out of the box and doing what they did in Rwanda. So I think in the case of Rwanda, after the genocide, the leadership was exemplary in trying to forge a way forward, to give people hope. So they went the extra mile in communicating this, in consulting with the population, because a lot of healing had to be done, so they had to be consulted. And articulating really well what the way forward was and to make sure that there was buy-in. And then at the same time setting up good systems within government in order to enact these plans. So when you have that kind of internal coherence, I think the external coherence was also exemplary in that period. As I said before, a lot of it has to do with guilt, no question about it. Maybe the international community, did not pay sufficient attention. Their eyes were cast aside from what was going on, and then after the fact, became guilty and became extra engaged. And then they had champions. I think Rwanda was lucky; they had champions. I mean, we all know, in the persons of Jan Pronk and Claire Short, the Dutch minister and the UK minister, strongly behind this and putting their weight behind it, and then the funds behind it, and that brought about, a phenomenon of huge budget support for Rwanda. So as a result, in 2004, out of an ODA of $500 million, 40% was budget support. Even in 2011, out of ODA of $1 billion, about 30% of it is budget support. As you all know, and this is really, budget support is the best aid there is. It's the best aid there is because the money is put aside, put for the government to use according to its priority and its plans. It is not creating anything, duplicative or in parallel. It's putting the money where a government prioritizes. But obviously, it doesn't happen often because the trust is not there for a lot of countries that they're able to manage those resources well. So it always intrigues me that in a country like Rwanda, so soon after the genocide, when everything was broken, it was a broken country, broken in infrastructure, broken in spirit, broken in capacities, how quickly the government was able to put together a vision and a plan, and most importantly, the capacities, human resources, in order to come forward with a very credible monitoring system, a very credible tracking system for the aid management, to the point where the budget support never dropped. In fact, it increased. So I think the point here is that when you have this kind of internal coherence the way you had there, a lot of positive things happen. The budget support, as I was saying, the decreased dependency on aid, as you look at the statistics in Rwanda in the years following, the aid dependency dropped. And then you looked at the other side of the equation, not the aid coming in, and then you see what happened, what impacts it had. And then one only has to look at all the MDGs and how they were able to exceed the goals in the MDGs, having child mortality and primary school enrollments, and this one always interests me, the fact that this is the only country, it seems, in the world that has 100% vaccination of girls against HPV. This is the virus that causes cervical cancer in women. Not even in the USA are we able to achieve that 100% vaccination. And then, of course, the highest rate of internet penetration in Africa. I believe I've read that close to the levels that one finds in Asia. So as I said, a lot of good happens from the way aid is used, and it's used effectively. Well, this is not maybe as a direct result of aid, but again because of the visionary government we had and the good practices and they put in place. This is one country that women never used to own land, but because of the change of land reform and land laws, women started owning land in high numbers, 11% owned by women, and then more importantly, 83% owned by women and men, husband and wife, whereas previously women hardly owned any land. So all this is to say that aid does translate it into everyday benefits for ordinary people. Now, the worst case scenario, I hate to pick on this country, but it's in the news, and this is Central African Republic. Obviously this is a country that has been, really had a bad start from get-go. It's a country that's been run by coup after coup after coup. I can't remember the last time there was any stable handover of government under the deposed President Bozize, who actually met a few times in Bangui. Honestly, one can say that there was a lack of vision, a lack of articulation of what the country, where it was going, where did he want to bring the country in. And could he even articulate that and communicate that with his people? So I think that was very lacking. And then as a result, it's really hard for the international side to be coherent, because the internal side is not coherent. And if I might say so, even worse, because I think the international community then sort of went on its own path and started, doing things what it wanted to do and putting conditionalities. Maybe there were a lot of times, really not sensible. So I just think it was a situation, I really couldn't think of a worse situation. And it really, in a way, it was no surprise that what happened in CAR. And then we have this middle scenario, and here I'm talking about Liberia. And I want to be very clear. I see Liberia as much closer to Rwanda, obviously, than to CAR, than to Central African Republic. It is not perfect. There's still corruption. You read about lots of problems in the press. But I think you cannot deny that the government is trying. the government, and it's internal. This is not external. It's not a World Bank. It's not an IMF. It's not a UN agenda. It's internal, and they've come up with several levels of planning in order to bring that coherence. There was the Lift Liberia Poverty Reduction Strategy in the 2008-2011, followed by Agenda for Transformation, and then followed by Agenda for a second Agenda for Transformation, which was a longer-term one. And I've seen the various ministers explain through a logical framework the kinds of things that they're trying to achieve and what they were tracking themselves. And you could just see from the way they were explaining that this was something internalized, that people understood, and they saw that they had to follow this path. So I think that what they did here, plus in a way also introducing a web-based aid management system whereby, and a budget system, a web-based budget system as well, whereby anyone in any of the ministries can access this web-based platform and see, what budgets have been allocated, what has been expended. Again, as I said, it's not perfect because you still hear of leakages here and there, but the fact that this is being done, and this is being done with earnest, and this cuts across all ministries, and there seems to be a will to want to get it right. I think this is a very, very promising beginning. Of course, we can't deny the fact that having a president that used to work on the outside with the bank and the UN system, and knowing fully, what it takes, having her on the inside obviously helps. So, in conclusion, I simply want to say that let's not get carried away a lot of times when we talk about coherence by only referring to external coherence. I think internal coherence is very important, and governments have this role. Sovereignty means more than just defining, what money goes where and what happens. I think is also the ability to articulate what the needs of the people are, really understanding what the nation needs to move forward and to go in that direction. So and also on top of which, I know this sounds very harsh, but in my part of the world, this has been done. There's also this concept of just say no. One doesn't have to bend always to a donor conditionality or donor preference. If it doesn't meet your priority and where you're trying to go, just tell the donor nicely. See you later. See you at another time. But of course, I realize that we're talking about fragile states. So I'm not really talking tough love in that way. I really think for fragile states, trying to emerge from everything, all the trials and tribulations, all the problems they've been through, obviously requires some help and some guidance from us, from the UN, the international community, in order to help them forge this internal coherence. And and really, I really believe that South-South cooperation, learning from another country that has emerged from this kind of a crisis, is invaluable. There's no Harvard-trained, Oxford-trained economist that can come in to teach them what another country in a similar situation has managed to climb out of. And that's where I see Accord's role. I think Accord is such a reputable Southern NGO, known for promoting all these goods and good governance and good principles. And I think Accord is in the perfect position to play that role, what I'm talking about, and both forging that internal and external coherence. So again, thank you very much for listening, and I hope I haven't rambled on for too long. But as I said, I want it to be in the form of a chat, and I hope you will react to some of my comments. Thank you, Cedric, and the rest. And Vasu, thank you too, Vasu.